Now don't worry, this list isn't about picking who's the best captain or anything like that, because frankly we want to survive through the weekend. No, this is about listing some of the things that a certain captain is very, very well known for. If there's ever a situation that requires a bit of a calm hand, a bit of a let's all chill out, then we get Captain Picard to make one of his speeches, even if they're not always the most chill. With that in mind, I'm Sean Ferrick for Trek Culture, and here are the 10 best Captain Picard speeches. Bollocks. The replicators are down, the turbo lifts aren't turbo lifting, I've got 20 power conduits with the powers out, and I have to go meet some Federation scientists about some bio-neural gel technology. That'll never go. And Julian's just informed me that tonight is drinks night in the Alamo. And they don't serve synthaholic quarks. Now, thankfully, my old buddy Tom Larkin has told me about Z-biotics. When you drink, alcohol leaves a toxic byproduct in your guts. That's what leaves you feeling ropey the next morning. Z-biotics gives your system an enzyme, much like your liver does, to help break down this byproduct, which should leave you feeling a lot better the next day. Julian, what are you doing hanging from up there? There's real science behind this. There's no plant extracts, there's no over-the-counter ingredients, and there's a 100% money-back guarantee. If you're not happy about it, we'll send you your money back. You head to zbiotics.com/trek and get 15% off your first order. Now, the replicators are replicating, the turbo lifts are lifting, the power conduits are conduiting. I'll go and meet those Federation scientists now. I'm telling you lads, bio-neural gel packs never take off. Number 10. With the first link, the chain is forged. The drumhead is often used as an example for how the cool and collected Captain Picard faces down his foes with his words alone. The great Gene Simmons guest stars as Admiral Nora Satie, who has been drafted in to investigate an alleged act of sabotage of the Enterprise. The story is an example of McCarthyism and witch hunts. With the backdrop of the House Un-American Committee hearings, the idea that enemies can be found wherever one cares to look looms heavy over the story. When Worf is pulled into Satie's hunt, Picard finds himself rapidly seeing events for what they are. Using Satie's own father's words against her, he says the following: with the first link, the chain is forged, the first speech censured, the first thought forbidden, the first freedom denied, chains us all irrevocably. Satie's hunt for collaborators on board the flagship leaves one man's career in ruins, but exposes her for the fearmongerer she really is. Picard, while sitting on trial on his own ship, calmly reminds her of these words, causing her to finally break and lose her cool. As the rest of the courtroom empties around her, she sits there in the knowledge that she has been exposed. The episode ends on a contemplative note. Picard reminds Worf that there will always be people like Satie out there, clothed in good intentions, ready to invoke fear into the seemingly perfect society of the Federation. Number 9. There it sits. The Measure of a Man is probably the Next Generation's first truly remarkable episode. It displayed a maturity and confidence of the series that had, to be blunt, been lacking to that point. Everything works here, from the performances to the themes to the very real sense that things may not end in the desired fashion. Picard is charged with defending Lieutenant Commander Data's rights as a sentient being, while Riker is tasked with prosecuting his friend. Lieutenant Bruce Maddox, who would return in Star Trek Picard, is the scientist wishing to take Data apart with the hope of replicating him. This, Guinan points out to Picard, will lay the first stones on the path to slavery of an entire race. Starfleet was founded to seek out new life. Well, there it sits, waiting. Picard's defense of Data is passionate, direct, and effective. Data is awarded the rights of any sentient being, the first of his kind to do so. It's one of the strongest episodes of Star Trek for portraying the need for equal rights, hidden, as Star Trek often does, in the world of science fiction and in the voice of Jean-Luc Picard. Number 8. How many does it take, Admiral? Star Trek Insurrection may not be counted among the very greatest of Star Trek films, but it is most definitely not without merit. There are some glorious action sequences, not least of which being the Riker maneuver, and some truly funny moments. Smooth as an android's bottom, eh Data? The most common criticism it receives is that it is like an extra long episode of The Next Generation, which seems an odd critique when the audience of the film were such fans of the show. All of the ingredients are there, including another example of Picard's oration. Admiral Dougherty, when confronted with the knowledge that Picard is fully aware of the intended plans for the removal of the Baku, assures the captain that there were only 600 people to be moved, none of whom were indigenous to the planet anyway. How many does it take, Admiral, before it becomes wrong? 1,000? 50,000? 1,000,000? How many does it take, Admiral, It's both a simple question and a damning one. The truth is that there really is no answer to the question other than to say that either it isn't wrong or one is too many. Patrick Stewart's delivery is far more direct and full of emotion than we were used to seeing him address an admiral with. His decision to remove his pips only compounds the scene further. Number 7. The line must be drawn here. Quite frankly, this is the go-to answer when the question is, what happens when Picard loses his cool? Star Trek First Contact was a massive departure for the crew of the Next Generation. A new Enterprise arrives while the Borg return. Finally, Picard is to be tested against his greatest enemy. Stuck in the past with dozens of drones slowly working their way through the ship, Worf advises Picard to set the auto-destruct. Consumed as he is by his need for revenge, Picard accuses Worf of cowardice before storming into the observation lounge. The film badly needed the character of Lily Sloan, a viewpoint character who was unconcerned with the chain of command or Picard's own reputation. She walks in and immediately takes him to task. What the audience wasn't expecting was the veracity of his reply. They invade our space, and we fall back. They assimilate entire worlds, and we fall back. Not again. The line must be drawn here. This far, no further. And I will make them pay for what they've done. He betrays his own heart here, finally allowing his thirst for vengeance to swim to the surface. It is this moment that truly shows Picard for what he was in danger of becoming, were it not for a splash of cold water in his face. Number 6. I find you a pitiable man. Chain of Command offers some of the most brutal scenes in the entire run of The Next Generation. The standoff between Picard and Madred, with Patrick Stewart and David Warner going toe-to-toe, is tense, disturbing, and harrowing. Having studied actual footage of torture provided by Amnesty International, Stewart sinks into a version of the captain the audience had never seen before, and yet, even at the hands of this Cardassian jailer and physically bruised and brutalized, Picard manages to keep his mind. Madred gives away too much of his own backstory, revealing that he had been a child on the streets fighting for scraps. This awakens something in Picard that not many saw coming. Whenever I look at you now, I won't see a powerful Cardassian warrior. I will see a 6-year-old boy who was powerless to protect himself. In spite of all that you've done to me, I find you a pitiable man. This infuriates Madred, though Picard seems to take enormous spirit from this. It is not the reveal that Madred had a difficult childhood that bolsters him, but rather that there is humanity, so to speak, in every situation. If there is one thing that could be said for Picard, it's that he looked for the best in every situation, despite the personal cost. So, though he truly had begun to crack at Madred's line of questioning, he offered a final ray of hope. Number 5. The first duty. There is one thing to be said for the anger that Picard felt towards the Borg. They had, of course, captured and transformed him beyond his control. There was a deep sense of personal violation. His feelings in First Contact, while they threatened to overwhelm him, were certainly understandable. The first duty offers something different. This is Picard at his most disappointed, with Wesley Crusher being the culprit. The scene in the ready room, with Picard confronting Crusher with the truth, is written and filmed as a mentor giving his student the dressing down of a lifetime. The first duty of every Starfleet officer is to the truth, whether it's scientific truth, or historical truth, or personal truth. It is the guiding principle on which Starfleet is based. Now, if you can't find it within yourself to stand up and tell the truth about what happened, you don't deserve to wear that uniform. Crusher's actions in performing the Culver's Starburst maneuver were one thing, but it was his part in covering up the death of Joshua Albert that stings Picard the most. Thematically, the fact that Wesley, a character who famously uttered the lie, "Starfleet doesn't lie," is caught in a cover-up hits even more. Rarely had Picard spoken with so much direct anger toward another person, so to have it directed toward the stand-in son figure hits all the right notes. Number 4. Whisper from the Dark. The Next Generation's second season was a marked improvement on its debut year, with several standout episodes. Pen Pals, though not often held up against episodes like Q-Who and The Measure of a Man, offers a scene in which Picard and his senior officers discuss the ethics of their situation. Sarjenka's plea to Data, begging him to rescue her, leads the android officer to violating the Prime Directive itself. Picard, perhaps more so than the other captains in Trek, kept the Prime Directive front and center in his reasoning. Data, your whisper from the dark has now become a plea. We cannot turn our backs. The discussion, one which includes the viewpoints of every officer, asks the tough question of what to do when the Prime Directive can lead to suffering. For some of the offers, the answer is easy: rush to her aid. For others, less so. What is the precedent that it sets? What happens the next time a distress call comes from a pre-First Contact civilization? The decision to act on the distress call is by no means an easy one that adds to the complexity of the Prime Directive and the relationship with it. While other series would tackle these issues again, including notably Star Trek Voyager in the episodes Equinox Parts 1 and 2, this would almost serve as a tentpole for the decisions to follow. Number 3. Seize the Time. The Inner Light, written by Morgan Gendel, is both a simple story of a life lived in the space of a few minutes and the character-defining evolution of Picard's character. At least until the next episode aired. One of the episode's greatest strengths, that it is so profoundly affecting, leads to a weakness. It is rarely discussed after this. However, on Catan, Picard, or Cayman, lives a full life. He lives long enough to see his daughter begin to grow, leading to his imparting a haunting, crucial piece of advice to her. Seize the time, Maribor. Live now. Make now always the most precious time. Now will never come again. Catan, featuring drought and eventual destruction as it is, has no future. Therefore, the people who helped to shape it would die out. Though at this point in his journey, Picard had adapted to life as Cayman, a part of him remembers that. He knows that in some way he has been transported to a place that had, and would always have, a countdown timer over it. Rather than despair, Picard reminds Maribor that in every moment there is possibility and potential. It's an idea that would be revisited in Star Trek Insurrection, along with the character of Anij. The final scene of the episode, showing Picard holding on to the Resican flute, a tangible piece of a time gone by, hammers this home. Number 2. Romulan lives. No. Lives. Star Trek Picard picks up in the years after the events of both Star Trek Nemesis and the Romulan supernova as it was first shown in Star Trek 2009. During this time, Picard had been promoted to Admiral and tasked with leading the effort to relocate the Romulan people, a mammoth undertaking that would include redirecting huge amounts of Starfleet's resources. The actions of the Zhat Vash, a secret sect of the Romulan people, led to the reprogramming of androids assigned to the Mars Utopia Planitia fleet yards. They rebel, murdering thousands of people before destroying all of the resources planned for the Romulan relief effort. Anger and bitterness begin to creep into Starfleet from this point on. Picard becomes something of a figurehead of the past from a time before so many lives were lost trying to save Romulan lives. There were millions of lives at stake. Romulan lives? No. Lives. During an interview on the anniversary of the disaster, Picard is asked why so much effort should have been directed towards saving Romulan lives. His simple counter-argument is both brilliant and devastating. Once people are othered, it's easy to view them as lesser. This starts with language, but extends beyond that. Catching that, owning it, was Picard's way of making sure the people of the Federation remembered that Romulans also deserved to live. Number 1. Disturbing historical parallels. The events of Star Trek Insurrection had a precedent. Journey's End, a 7th season episode of The Next Generation, served as both a final episode for Wesley Crusher and a debut episode for what would eventually become the Maquis. A new treaty between Starfleet and the Cardassian Empire creates the Demilitarized Zone, while also placing several former Federation worlds under Cardassian control. One such planet is Dorvan 5, on which a community of Native American settlers has made a home. Admiral Nechayev, a sometime thorn in Picard's side, orders the captain to convince them to move to another world, one that is not in Cardassian territory. Picard's brows furrow. You see, Admiral, there are some very disturbing historical parallels here. Once more, they're being asked to leave their homes because of a political decision that has been taken by a distant government. He is, of course, referring to the episode's inspiration, the mass relocation and assassination of the Native American people. While the episode would go even further in its exploration of this idea, this speech that the captain makes is both incredibly well defined and also calmly insistent. Picard has had his share of fights with admirals, and this certainly wouldn't be the last one, but at least it is well worded. Nechayev, for her part, underestimated the Dorvan colonists' will to remain, an idea that will be revisited in Deep Space Nine's The Maquis. That's everything for our list today, folks. Thank you so much for joining us. What do you think should be included? Or, if we were to do a second list of Picard speeches, what do you think should be on it? Let us know in the comments below. Please don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and remember you can catch us over on Twitter at TrekCulture. You can catch myself at Sean Ferrick on all the various socials as well. Live long and prosper till I see you again. Make sure that if you're going to say something, say it with the power of Picard. My friends in Ukraine, stay strong, stay well, we love you. Everyone, have a good time, make it so.